All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Greatness Tribe podcast. Today is such an exciting day. I have here with me Mort Fertel, the world authority on the psychology of relationships and what I call the marriage saver. And Mort is a father of five and he has been featured in the New York Times, Fox News, Huffington Post, USA Today, Chicago Tribune, Los Angeles Times, Psychology Today, NBC, as well as receiving reviews on his books from John Gray, the author of Men Are From Mars, and Stephen Covey, the author of The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Mort is the founder of Marriage Fitness, as well as the Fix Your Marriage podcast. And what I love about what Mort's message is, which is so different from everyone else's, is that the key to love is not in finding the right person. It's rather in learning to build a lasting love with the person you are with. So with that, Mort, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Mort, when I was reading your book, I was just so fascinated because your approach is so different from everybody else's. So can you fill us in a little bit about why it is that you came to such a different approach? Like, what was your background story?
Yeah, it's very different because we tried all those other approaches and really found them to be a little silly and also, frankly, ineffective. I'm really coming from this from a very practical and personal place. This was not originally a profession for me. My wife and I had our own marital crisis, and we sought help in that crisis. And we were really kind of horrified with the approach that most of the people that were trying to help us were taking. The approach basically in typical counseling and therapy starts with what's wrong. And we found that the more we delved into the problems, the more we talked about what was wrong, the more we became mired in all the negativity of our situation. And we walked out of the office of the counselor feeling worse, not better. And what we found in the long run was that the key to really succeeding in marriage and in a marital crisis is not to fix what's wrong, but it's to make new things right. And when we started to do that, that's when we really started to experience a transformation in our marriage. Now, when we experienced it ourselves, we weren't thinking that this was going to be a profession, a career, a book. I mean, we were just, a husband and wife trying to make things work. But as we looked back on what we experienced, we really felt that we had a responsibility to the community and to the world to share what we had learned and realized. And so we kind of retraced what we did and created like sort of a program or a formula out of it. And that was really the birth of Marriage Fitness. When I originally wrote it, I thought, okay, I felt passionate about writing and I'm going to spend this time. I camped out in the library for about 9 months.
Oh, wow.
I thought, okay, I'll make a few copies for my kids and I'll go on to like whatever else I'm going to do. But before I did that, I sent the manuscript around a few places and wow, it really got the attention of people and the media and some significant authors, and that kind of launched things.
That's so incredible. I think that so many people will resonate with what you said about going through the typical marriage therapy route where you just talk about your problems, talk about what you want fixed, and you're there for years and years, and it just doesn't get better. It feels like it's worse and worse. Now, you came up with a new system. How did you do that? Like, I know that you said we just focused on what we can do to build, but there are billions of people that go through marriage problems and don't come to that conclusion. So what was it for you that led you down this path?
There were just little experiences that we had with being kind to each other and doing the right thing that we started to realize were making the difference. And so we just started to build upon that and do more and more and more of those positive, healthy things in the relationship. If you think about it, the core marital problem in every marital crisis situation is the same. People describe it in 1,000 different ways, but the core problem is always the same, and that is a lack of connection between a husband and wife. Everything else we would describe is not really the problem, it's the symptom. And so what we did is instead of dealing with all of the symptoms, we just went down to the core and did the things that we felt were helping us reconnect. And the more we felt that working, the more we doubled down on it. And it really
Wow.
continued to be effective.
It really, like, I really do encourage everyone to pick up a copy of Marriage Fitness, because the way I see it is that, first of all, what learned from this book is that it allows you to really see your spouse as like a person and like who they really are and connect to their core. And we'll talk about soulmates in just a few minutes. I felt that it was a really good book for somebody who's grown up not having seen a healthy marriage, or even if you have, you just don't know how to replicate it. But it's really like what you describe in the book is that when you want to lose weight, there's got to be some sort of diet or fitness program that you put yourself through. And this is giving that for marriage. People don't really know. It's like hygiene for your marriage. It's really an
Exactly.
incredible thing. It was quite eye opening. But I have a question for you. On the back of the book, you write that this book is perfect for anyone who's gone through a gamut of marital issues, including infidelity, broken trust, lost love, emotional neglect, addictive behaviors, boredom, stubborn spouse, emotional infidelity, silent treatment. My question going through the book was like, what if there are these deep resentments or things that people are holding on to? How do you then just move forward and build this love?
Discipline. What's discipline? Discipline is doing what you don't want to do when you know you need to do it. But the first step is for people to appreciate that they need to do it. In other words, if you knew that doing X, Y, and Z, these positive relationship habits, would transform your marriage, then you would probably be able to discipline yourself to do it despite some lingering resentment. But the reason people don't do it is because they don't realize that that's the path to healing and reconciliation. They first want to cleanse themselves of the resentment before they act positively, which, you know, from sort of an intuitive perspective is reasonable. It's just not accurate. It's just not true. It's reasonable. And so we're kind of held back from acting positively because we want the resentment cleansed first. And we don't realize that that's not possible and not the way it works. If people understood that there was a clear path to healing and reconciliation, and that all they had to do was discipline themselves to implement these positive relationship habits, and that they had to do that, unfortunately, prior to the resentment being cleansed, most people would do it. It's kind of like, you know, if you expect to feel good, if you expect to feel like exercising before you exercise, you'll be stuck forever. You have to realize that, okay, if I'm really going to be in shape, if I'm really going to be healthy, if I'm really going to be physically fit, I can't wait till I feel like exercising to exercise all the time. Sometimes I have to do it when I don't want to do it. And by the way, isn't that what ultimately leads to me feeling like I want to do it? In other words, if I'm exercising for 30 minutes, by the time I'm 10 minutes into it, now I'm into it. Now I feel good. I wish I felt this way before I started. It would have been easy to start, but I didn't, and I won't. I have to be able to jump on the machine and get going. Then once I get going, the activity generates the feelings. It works the same in marriage. And
I love that so
a lot of
much.
people are stuck because they just don't realize the sort of the steps or the progression. The other thing that I think that's really important that people often don't realize is marriage is like anything else. It's like physical fitness. It's like law. It's like medicine. It's like business. What do I mean? It's like golf. There's a way to do it. There's a way to do it. I mean, pick anything you're competent at, whatever your profession is. If you're good, the chances are very good. There was training, there was coaching, there was like, this is how to do it. You know, like, I'm not a golfer. Now you could hand me a golf club and some balls and I could go whack it, but the ball would be going all over the place. What am I supposed to get angry and frustrated? Oh, why isn't it going into the hole? Well, it's not going into the hole because I don't know how to play golf. Oh, well, could you teach me? Well, sure, I could teach you. Okay, so teach me. Oh, and now I practice. Oh, well, now look, the ball's going into the hole. It's not magic. So what for reasons we can discuss if you want, we tend to think that marriage and love is different. We even have these expressions in our culture that influence us, like love is a mystery. You have to be lucky in love, and it's chemistry. So those are the lies of romantics. It has nothing to do with luck. It's skill. And you don't have to be lucky, you have to be smart. But we don't realize that. And so we don't necessarily look for a path, and we don't realize that there is a path because we have this sense that it's this mysterious thing, which is just not true.
Hmm. I really love that because you're putting the power back in everyone's hands. Like you want a good marriage, like here is how to build it. Like don't wait, you don't need to wait for somebody else to change. And I love that visual that you just gave us of somebody at the gym. Like I was just thinking in my mind, like if somebody's resentful about their body type, like they're not going to necessarily go to therapy and get over that resentment before they get on the treadmill. Like that would just hold them back. So it's really the same thing. That's really inspiring. And I know one thing that you're famous for is you have like a Lone Ranger track, which is for somebody whose spouse is like not on board or isn't interested or doesn't want to do the work. Like, how does that work with just one spouse interested in making things better?
Right. So this is another one of those myths that I love to try to dispel. Generally, if you have marital problems and you go to a sort of a typical counselor or therapist for marital help and you're there alone, they'll be like, well, what are you doing? Where's your husband? Where's your wife? And if they're not there, well, how do you expect me to help you? I mean, you want me to help you get divorced? I can do that. But like help, a marriage is the two of you. Like, where is he? Where is she?
Right.
That's ridiculous. One person can have a tremendous influence on the transformation of a marriage. Now, maybe I should say first, it should go without saying, but I'll say it. Of course, it's better if both people are making an effort. Of course. I mean, do we really even need to talk about that? It's obvious. Of course, it would be easier if your husband or wife were joining you in the effort. Of course. And of course, you'll make more progress and you'll make it faster. Okay, but again, do we really have to talk about that? I mean, it's obvious. But now that that's not the case, now what do you want to do?
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you really want to stand on ceremony and complain that your husband or wife is not joining you in the effort, or do you want to do something about it? Because if you want to use that as justification for not making an effort, you can do that and you'll feel justified, but it's not legitimate. There is a tremendous amount that you can do unilaterally to make a difference in the marriage. And very often, and here's the key, very often it's those unilateral efforts that ultimately inspire the other spouse to join in the effort to heal the marriage.
It's so
And so,
interesting. I saw like on YouTube, you have like a video of testimonials of people who have gone through a lot of your programs. And I think there was one video about people who have gone through the Lone Ranger track. And like without fail, what the spouse always said was like, I just saw something change in him, or I just saw something change in her, and that made me recommit. Can you like give us like a secret, like one of your Lone Ranger secrets?
well, I just did share one of the secrets, which is take initiative. Don't wait for your spouse to join you in the effort. Sometimes a marriage that's in crisis or having problems needs leadership. If you're joining your spouse in not making any effort because they're not making effort, then you're giving the leadership over to them. But if they're not making any effort, you need to take the reins of the leadership and make an effort and let them follow you. So let me put it to you like this. We should never treat people the way they treat us. We should treat people the way we want them to treat us. So your spouse is making no effort in the marriage. They're not being kind. They're not being loving. They're not devoting time and attention to you. They're not, X, Y, and Z. So you could return the favor. and you end up divorced or unhappy, or both. Or you could say, you know what? That's not the way I want him or her to treat me. So that's not the way I'm going to treat them. That's leadership. That's leadership.
Mm.
And very often that's what's required, because you see, your spouse is doing the same thing. You don't realize it.
Wow.
I don't mean you personally, of course.
Right.
People don't realize it. Like, they think, he or she is evil, or they're trying to drive me nuts, or like, whatever. No, they're telling themselves a story that's justifying their either inactivity or being a jerk or having an affair, whatever the case may be. They're telling themselves a story that gives them license to behave as they're behaving. Well, guess who is the villain of that story? It's you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's how they justify what they're doing. Now, okay, they're not right. You're not okay. We're not after the truth here, right? It's all a matter of perspective. Your spouse thinks that's their perspective. So your job is to ruin their story. Turn that villain into a prince or a princess. Now they can't justify that bad behavior anymore. And from the inside, then they begin to feel compelled to behave differently. It's very powerful.
That's very powerful. And it's a big journey, like that's like a very empowering journey to go on. And I want to, so I love that. I love that. Um, the basic premise of your book is that love is the solution to like all of life's problems, or that like, we have this basic primal need for love. How did you realize that? Because you mentioned like, we have a lot of professionals listening to this podcast. You said, if your marriage isn't going well, like just nothing is going to go well. And if your marriage is going well, everything will go well. How did you come up with that? How did you recognize that?
It's everywhere. I mean, first of all, we can look in the Chumash. Adam and Chava were created as one original androgynous creature. And then Hashem separated them. And so we feel like we're missing a part of ourselves. That's the existential origin of man. And to reconnect is the journey of every person. That's our sense of completion. That's our sense of wholeness. We all feel like we're missing a part of ourselves until we feel that sense of connection. If you, I think your audience is a frum audience, right? So
No.
What did you say? No?
Not necessarily. We have
Okay, fine.
all the range. Yeah.
So then I won't stop there. If you don't prefer the Chumash, take a look at Plato. So he also described things similarly, that that a person was created as one and then divided. Plato describes the same thing. And all you have to do also is just look out into the world, right? I mean, everybody in every situation is yearning to connect with another person, whether it's a child to their parents, whether it's a teenager to their friends, or whether it's somebody, post-teenage years who is looking for love. Everybody. Even here's I think the best example. The best example is the people I talk to who say they want to get divorced and never get married again. This has been the most horrendous experience. I'm finished. I'm done. I don't want to have a. Okay, so they get divorced. I guarantee you, within a year, they're on Match.com.
Yeah, that's so true.
Right? I mean, so whether you want to look at, great philosophers, whether you want to look into the Chumash, or whether you just want to look around at our world, it's so obvious that the most burning desire for every human being is to unite as one with another. A man should leave his mother and father, bond with his wife, and they shall become one. Under the chuppah, the bracha we make, one of the brachas we make, is that we bless, we thank God that He created man in His image. Well, what do you mean? Why are we making this bracha under the chuppah? Shouldn't we be making that a bris? No, We don't, because that's not really the image of oneness of God. It's under the chuppah where a man and woman stands together.
It's so interesting. And it's so interesting to me that you just said that because I think that there's, and you discuss this in your book, falling out of love, and people say like, oh, I'm not married, I'm not in love with my spouse anymore, I didn't marry the right person. And you really explain that it's not about marrying the right person, it's about what you, like, you gave such a great example where you said if you don't know how to use your computer, you don't just throw it out and go buy another one, you figure out how to use your computer. I thought that was really great. So, what happens after a few years of marriage, and why is it that it's not important who we marry? Like, what it kind of reminded me of, like, there's different sects of Judaism where they don't get to know each other very well before they get married. And the people are like, how does that work? How could they actually live together if they don't even know each other? And I think your book explains that. Can you give us a little bit about that?
Yeah, yeah. So, it's true. The key to succeeding in marriage is not finding the right person. It's learning to love the person that you found. And it really comes back to the idea that succeeding in marriage is a skill. It's something that we have to learn to do. Now, as to why we, quote, fall out of love after a few years, why is it so difficult after a few years? I can't answer that question. We could ask Hashem. It's clearly just the way God created the world. You could have asked, a person could challenge me and say, love is a skill? I'm not sure about that, Mort. I mean, look around. There are a whole lot of people falling in love all the time, quite easily, with no wisdom and no effort and no skill. Everybody can do it, and everybody does do it. And that's true. That's a gift from God. And that initial experience, it's true, does not require any skill. But anybody who is observed for long enough notices that that experience fades. We lose it. I don't know why. It's just the way the world was created. It just seems to be the way relationships work.
And inspiration and anything, really.
Right, exactly. And that becomes a turning point then. What are you going to do at that point? Are you going to blame it on the compatibility? Are you going to blame it on your husband or wife or boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever the case may be? You can do that and then jump again to another relationship and go through the same cycle. And many people do that. And then they look back over the course of their life and they have a whole series of relationship roadkill. And what's sometimes very sad is I work with people sometimes that are, let's say they're in their 60s, for example. And let's say, for example, they're on their third marriage. And they've gone through that cycle that I just described multiple times. And as they tell the story, you can see that they have explanations for why every relationship failed. And at the heart of that explanation are some circumstances. And at the heart of that explanation is always who my spouse was and what they did and why they did it. It's sometimes a very painful thing to point out to people that it seems to me that the thing that all of these situations had in common was you. That's what they all had in common. And if that changed, maybe the cycle would change. Not maybe.
It would, right, if you knew. So God, yeah, go ahead.
God gives us the very challenges we need to fix the things about ourselves that need to be fixed. And if we fix them, so very often those challenges go away. If we don't fix them, he'll give us another chance. If you know what I mean.
Right. Wow.
In other words, if we don't fix them, why is this happening to me again? To me again, to me again. What do you mean? It's happening to you again because you didn't fix it last time it happened, and the last time, and the last time.
So good. So good. So I'm keeping an eye on the clock, and there's, two main questions that I want to ask you. Your book has this really beautiful premise about becoming soulmates rather than just like what we kind of touched on, which is like this feeling of endless love that just lasts forever and ever. You explain that you can become a soulmate, and you explain that people are always changing. So if you only love your spouse if they do X, Y, or Z, then that could fizzle out as they take on new hobbies, new interests, change their life, etc. And you explain that when you have a soulmate or create a soulmate, it's okay that they have flaws. You don't have to hide their flaws. People could just be themselves. So can you talk a little bit about this concept of becoming soulmates and a little bit of how to do that?
Sure. So we become soulmates by having a series of relationship habits that results in us feeling close. Okay. Siri is talking to me. I don't know why. Siri, be quiet. I wasn't talking to you. Sorry. So by having a series of relationship habits that creates that closeness, right? I mean, what does it mean to have soulmates? To feel like you have your soulmate. What does that mean? We'd have to be a poet to really answer that question well, but synonyms might be close, intimate, love, warmth, right? So what are the habits that create that experience between two people? And that's what it means to become soulmates. It's to engage in those habits that create that experience. Now you asked how, so that's the whole marriage fitness system. We don't have time for that, but I'll give you an example. Okay, I'll give you an example. An example would be, I'll give you actually two examples because I think there's an important difference between these two examples. One example is something not to do. There's certain things that we do that destroy that experience of closeness and intimacy. For example, the 3 C's: criticize, condemn, and complain. That experience in a relationship is like cancer, like a 4th C. And my advice regarding those 3 C's is very simple. Don't do it. Almost everyone does it. And when we do it and we mean well, we think it's going to be helpful. We want it to be helpful. We anticipate it's going to, we're trying to be productive, but be honest with yourself. When you criticized, condemned, or complained to your wife or your husband, was it ever productive? I can almost bet you the answer is no. It's never productive. Don't do it. So that's the refraining of something that, and just like in halacha, right? There are things we have to do and things we have to refrain from doing. It's the same in a marriage. There are things we have to do and there are things we have to refrain from doing. The 3 C's is one of the things we have to refrain from doing. Let's give an example of something we have to do, and it's the opposite of the 3 C's. What's the opposite of criticize, condemn, and complain? Gratitude. When I ask people, what's wrong with your husband? What's wrong with your wife? They get out the yellow pad and I mean, like, okay, that's enough. That's enough. By the way, tell me something good. What's their blessing? What's their gift? What do you love about them? Gee, I don't know. Let me think about that. Can I get back to you tomorrow? We become experts at catching our husband or our wife doing things wrong. I have a challenge for you. Catch them doing something right every day and make a big deal out of it. It doesn't eliminate all the things they're doing wrong. It doesn't justify them doing those things wrong. It doesn't mean they don't have to fix those things doing wrong. It just means that you noticed what they're doing right. And that creates soulmate experience, warmth, connection, intimacy, love, whatever you want to call it. A person needs to be noticed. They need to be appreciated. And when we're feeling that in a relationship, that's what part of the experience of love and connection, or as you're referring to it, as part of the experience of feeling like this is my soulmate.
Yeah. So good. And, just throughout your book, you do give very specific, like we said, a kind of a diet for your marriage or a fitness program for your marriage, which includes things you could do each day, each week, each year, which are super helpful because we just don't learn these things. We don't learn how to build a marriage, what's necessary, how many retreats per year, how long it should be. You give really good guidelines. And I love what you said in it, which, you totaled up how many hours you should invest in your marriage. And it was like 300 and something a year. And you said, if you don't have 3% of your year available to dedicate to your spouse, then what are you doing? Like, what are you living for? And I really, really love that. What would be your final message to somebody who really, I mean, these people, everybody who's listening are really, really good people, people that really care. What can they do to improve themselves and improve their marriage like today?
So pardon I'll give you two things. And on the first one, I have to apologize for the repetition, but it's so important that it warrants repetition. The first thing is to appreciate it. Marriage is like anything else. There is a way to do it. It's not a mystery. You don't have to be lucky. Learn it. And if you learn it, you'll get better at it. And the second thing I would recommend is if you can accept that, then my challenge to you is take the first step. In other words, take some initiative to learn what it means to be a good husband. Learn how to be a good wife. And if I could throw in a third, I hope that's not overwhelming.
Yeah, good.
It is take the action. Like, in other words, not only learn it, but do it. So, for example, today you learned about the importance of gratitude/appreciation in a marriage. Okay, so now I challenge you every day from here on out to implement that into your life, into your marriage. Catch your husband, your wife doing something right every day and make a big deal out of it. Not that hard. It's not rocket science. You don't have to have a PhD in psychology. You don't have to sit on the couch in therapy for years. It's simple, but what is common sense is often not common practice. Make it common practice, and you'll see a difference in your marriage.
Amazing. So, where can people connect with you and let you know how it's going for them? Get a copy of your book, find out about your programs. What are your programs? All the good
Yeah,
stuff.
so you can go to mortfertel.com. And the best thing, actually, of course, you're welcome to buy my book. You're welcome to join the program, the Marriage Fitness Telebootcamp. But the first step, I think, is on my website is a free report. It's totally free. There's no strings attached. 7 secrets for fixing your marriage. And you can get it at mortfertel.com.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so, so much for your time and for really putting in the time to give us such a systematic approach to how to build lasting love. So thank you for what you're doing.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.